Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Wireless Podcast. You're here with Damien Brown, and today's guest is former Army officer and current veteran business owner Michael Lorigan. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No worries. Well, as always, I like to just see where the conversation takes us. So I thought I'd just start off today. Most people commonly want to know what everyone did before the military and why they chose the military. It seems to be like a really common question. So, did you come straight out of school, or did you go and do some stuff and then decide that the military needed you, like I did?
Look, I didn't have any real plans to join the military. It wasn't really, to be honest, it wasn't even really on my radar. I was playing rugby league all through high school, which, just like most young blokes who were playing rugby league at the time, their dream was state of origin. That didn't work out for me. I got an injury and things like that, so that didn't work out for me. And honestly, I didn't know what was next. I didn't really have a direction. And then my brother joined the Air Force. And
Sensible.
Yeah. Well, quite smart. And that sort of gave me that insight into the military a little bit. And the more I looked into it, the more it made sense for who I was as a person and what I wanted to achieve.
So, what age did you decide to join the military?
I think I did around about 12 months after high school, but I applied pretty much straight out of high school.
Yeah.
The process took some time, and I ended up at the Royal Military College. I think I just turned 19. 19 or 20.
Young, right? So, what was it? What was it like? I mean, I obviously don't know. I was a digger, but what was it like at RMC and to go through that process at 19 years old?
Yeah, well, look, I can speak on both sides because I did what was called the bridging course at the time, and that was targeted at younger people coming through to give them a little bit more experience before they got to the Royal Military College. So I ended up going and doing the reservist course at Kapooka, the 4-week course, and then I did a 3-month adventure training course. So by the time I hit RMC, I'd already been 6 months in the military, albeit just in training command at the time. So the initial idea of RMC is the same as Kapooka. And when I got there, it wasn't so daunting. So realistically for me, the daunting part was when I went to Kapooka. Walking through the doors at first and having your corporal screaming in your face.
When the bus pulls up, all you see is the windows of that front building and they line you all up behind those cones.
Right. The only thing I can remember thinking is, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, for sure. That's like a I guess a good way to give you an understanding of what the soldiers go through as well. So exactly. Once you went through RMC, then you go and do. So where was it you chose? Because officers don't choose their core until they're already close to finishing their course.
Yeah,
is that
that's
right?
So you put in your preferences about halfway through.
Yeah.
And you can put in up to 4 preferences, and then it comes down to how well you've done. Depends on what preference you get and availability and things like that. So it was about midway through that we put it in, and I had Armoured Corps and Infantry as my first 2 choices. Honestly, I didn't have a preference one way or the other. It just came down to availability at the end. But, if I was to have gone to a Corps other than that, I would have been pretty disappointed. But realistically, it came down to I was enjoying what I was doing at RMC, being outfield and doing the combat type role. I was just enjoying it, and that's when I knew that that's the direction I wanted to go.
That's awesome, man. And then you go off and do obviously your Armoured Corps training.
Yeah, that's right. So that was difficult. The ROBC or Regimental Officer Basic course for Armoured Corps is quite tough. So you do all of the stuff that a soldier would do, all the driver training and things, and gunnery and all of that sort of stuff. But then the tactics wing was difficult. It was 5 days a week out bush. Then you come back, wash all the vehicles, have the weekend off, and then you're back out field for 5 more days. So it was, and the tactical side of things, the academic level was quite high.
That's an officer thing, mate. Getting the weekends off in the middle of field day.
Gentlemen cavalry hours, as we like to call it.
I don't ever remember that coming back from field on a Friday, going out on a Monday.
Mate, and the best thing was because all of the officers that were, and sergeants that were teaching you, they wanted their weekend too. So
yeah, for sure.
You were back in early Friday morning. Vehicles washed by midday, and then you're in.
So you were doing 3.5 days field.
Well, that's exactly how most officers work, you know.
Yeah, or don't. Yeah. So
I see what this podcast is. Officer bashing with Damien Brown.
You got to get in while you can.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I got my fair share. So you did your officer training course for Armoured Corps, and then you got a unit. Now, there's only 2 units for Armoured Corps.
Yeah,
well, full time.
Yeah, 3 units, but it was pretty rare to go to B34 in Townsville straight out of ROBC.
Yeah.
They normally took on the more experienced officer.
Yeah.
So 214 and 2 Cav, your 2 choices. But we pretty much got told during ROBC, anyone who got into A Squadron at 214 was going to Afghan.
Yeah.
So the guys that I was going through with, academically, most of them were more advanced than I was, and so I couldn't keep up in that regard. So I just put in some extra work and made sure that I was, sitting in the top sort of tier of the group.
So when you got told that when you went to that squadron that you were going to Afghan, how long had you been in the army at that point?
Well, I wasn't even in the real army at that point. I was still in training command.
Yeah.
So once you finished ROBC, you got sent to 214. So, yeah, I'd been out of RMC for 3 months at that point when we got told. I was still in training, technically.
Yeah. So, for you, would have been like 2 years at RMC.
Yeah.
Or plus your course,
yeah,
and then your RMBC course.
That's
so
right.
a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're like 21, roughly, or something like that.
Yeah.
You're in charge. You've been you got your posting.
So, posting to 214, which was, started 2009. I got to the unit there, and I walked into a troop that, at that stage, everyone was super experienced. There was deployment after deployment after deployment, and the Cav guys were going everywhere, especially Iraq at the time. So I walked into a troop where just about everyone but myself had at least 2 deployments. So walked into a 6'2", 110 kilo troop sergeant. And this whole experienced group of guys, and I was just a young kid coming out, and I knew jack shit really. Like, you've got all the academic knowledge, but you don't know real army at all. So I was lucky that I walked into a troop as experienced as it was, because they basically ran themselves, which allowed me to develop a lot easier.
Well, from an OR's point of view, or a digger's point of view, there's like 2 types of officers, right? The one that comes in is like, nah, he'll do it my way, and the one that comes in is, like you said, super experienced unit. You don't need to force anything, and they almost like help you, fit into the unit.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's exactly right. I like to think that I went in there and I didn't try to change anything too dramatic. And my troop sergeant, he basically said to me, "Look, I'm here as your mentor, and I'll continue to run the troop until you're ready to run the troop." Which I took as a really positive thing. And, you'd be stupid to go into a group like that and not just grab onto the experience that they had. And as I said, I was super lucky, and we knew we were gearing up for Afghanistan. So I took the opportunity that I was given, where I didn't necessarily have to run the troop per se, to find out ways that I could develop myself to really be able to take over when we got to Afghanistan.
Yeah. I can definitely appreciate the earliness of getting that heads up that you're going there. I did 6 months and was still IETs when they told me what company I was going to, and that was going to Afghan 6 months later. So
right.
It's also exciting, right? Because
it is exciting. I mean,
it's like the trip.
Right.
Like everyone talks about, I wouldn't want to go there, or all this shit about fucking war zones or whatever. But when you're doing the job in Armoured Corps, be the same as infantry and artillery, you can't fucking shoot people for a living. So it's like, this is the only time you get to do your job.
Yeah.
What you're trained to do, and it's not necessarily shooting people, but it's like,
I was going to clarify that.
It's like, driving your vehicle in a real life situation or commanding troops in a real life situation.
100%.
You can go and do it out field and it's like playing armies, but like you don't get to go and do that without deployments. And that for a soldier is the ultimate goal, is to deploy and do your job.
For sure, and I can use the footy analogy, because that's what I wanted to be first time, and it's or at first, and I mean it's like sitting on the bench, and not being able to get out onto the field during the big games, and that's how I looked at it as far as my job. If I'm joining for this reason, and we all knew at the time when we were joining the military that a deployment was likely, if not probable. And we joined for that reason. So to have been left behind, I would have been really disappointed. So I consider myself lucky that I got that opportunity, regardless of how, the trip went. I consider myself lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. So you deployed, and then how long after you deployed did you decide to get out of the military?
Well, it was a couple of years. So while I was over in Afghanistan, my OC was a SAS major, and he talked to me about the idea of joining special forces and things like that, which piqued my interest. So when I got back from Afghanistan, I got posted down to Kapuka as an instructor, and spent the 12 months there training up to join special forces. Unfortunately, and it's a story as you hear many times, I broke my wrist about 9 days out from doing the selection course. And I just didn't have the commitment to recover from that and then work through another 12 months of training and all that to go and do it. It really takes a committed guy to get that stuff done. So I got a little bit jaded at that point. I got sent back to 214 as the operations captain, and I felt like I couldn't achieve the things I wanted to achieve. And I always said to myself that if at any point I became so bitter that I didn't want to go to work, I knew the only people I was going to take it out on was the soldiers, and I never wanted to be that person. So I made the decision at that point to move on, because I just didn't want to be there anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome, because like one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard was, when the military is not your priority, then you need discharge. And,
yeah.
whether that's family or whatever the reason is, when it doesn't become your number one priority because the military is your life, then you need to discharge. Someone else said that to me once, and it's kind of similar to the self-reflection that you had.
Mm-hmm.
So post-military, you decided to open cafes.
No, so post-military, I started, I was contracting. So the same boss that I had in Afghanistan, he had a position available in the mining industry, which I went over and took. So I went on leave without pay and went over and sort of just to dip my toes into the sea of the civilian world and see how I liked it. It turned out I enjoyed that area, but I still missed the military. So I was doing month on, month off. So when I was coming back, I was doing reservist time. And I continued doing reservist time while I was working for a number of years, 3 to 4 years. And I was doing, at times, 3-4 days a week and then working only a couple of days civilian. So I had that mixed match for another 3 or 4 years.
So how long were you on leave without pay for? Just long enough to go and test it out?
Give or take 12 months, yeah.
Yeah. And were you doing reserve time while you're on leave without pay?
No, sorry. When I got
Afterwards?
back, after
Gotcha.
I was doing reserve time, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And then so where did the idea while starting a coffee shop come up? I mean, lots of people do contract work, the money's good, life's good. You kind of like, from what I can gather, you get a little bit more freedom than the military to do military shit.
Yeah.
But that's what everyone talks about. So most people that go there, they fall into that trap. Money's good, life's good, work's good. I get a month off every 2 months.
Yep.
It's a pretty good life if you can handle being away from home. So where did the idea to go, I'm just going to open up coffee shops, come from?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a good question, and there's a long answer and a short answer, but the short answer is because I met a girl while I was contracting. So I was living in the UAE, and I met Sarah, who's the co-founder of 214.
Yeah.
She's an Irish girl, and so when we decided to come back to Australia to aid in getting a visa, we decided to buy a cafe so that she had, work that she could go back to, and we could show all the proofs that we needed to. we were sitting, or I was working in the cafe, and the true story is that I was actually washing dishes, and I kind of had an epiphany about how the worst thing that could possibly happen in there was that someone was going to get a bad meal. And all of that sort of danger and risk of the job that I was doing had sort of disappeared, and I was just happy at doing it. And then we were just lucky enough to come across a cafe that had closed, which we got given the opportunity to take over. And that's when 214 was born. And Sarah actually came up with the name Cafe 214. And yeah, she's been with us ever since, and was instrumental in getting the cafes to where they are now.
And so you just took that one over, rebranded it, and then just grew one by one.
Yeah, I mean, I owned 2 cafes before I could make a coffee.
Yeah, well, it's a good feeling, but
yeah, it was, and definitely, everything was going really well out in Strathpine at that time, until there was various changes in the shopping centre, and it made it a little bit harder. But it just grew from there. You had the one, and then we just got presented other opportunities, and just grew from there.
Yep. And where if you couldn't make a coffee but you had 2 cafes, where did your, I guess, well, now for people that obviously don't know, you've got how many cafes?
So we got 7 operating cafes at the moment.
And you've also got a distribution centre.
Yeah, that's
right.
So a
wholesale. So in order to have like a wholesale company selling beans, like somewhere along the line, you must have taken like a turn, and found the passion for coffee, and not just owning a cafe to make money, but obviously you really enjoy it. The beans are awesome. So where at that point did you decide that it was not just cafes, but now we're going to start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was COVID, mate. I think once we saw the writing on the wall with a potential pandemic, we knew that we had to have an evolution in the business to survive. And selling beans to cafes was the logical choice. And what we found was we were able to present a price to these cafes that their supplier wasn't giving them. And I don't know why we could provide beans for cheaper. Obviously, there was a reason there that the suppliers were charging so much more. But that's why we looked at a way to, first off, make extra revenue in our business, but also help other cafes by lowering their overheads. And that's why where we effectively started to try and evolve to was selfishly to create extra revenue, and then non-selfishly to try and help out where we could.
Okay. And the purpose of 214, well, I mean, besides having a business, which we all talk about, you want a business, you want to set your family up, you want to set your future up, but there's a bigger goal to it, right?
Sure. So mental health advocacy for veterans is the ultimate goal that we have under 214, coffee for a cause, as we like to say. We've provided a number of donations. We provide an ear sometimes if people want to contact us, and we've provided links to advocates and things like that. Sometimes we've been able to do a lot, and during COVID we've been able to do a lot less than what we would have liked. But the ultimate goal is to help veterans, and we like to think we're doing that to the best of our ability when we can. And it's something that the ultimate goal for us is the larger business we can create, the more we can do for veterans.
And that's awesome, man. The more businesses that help veterans, in my opinion, the better. And the more of those businesses that link and create a better network, the better as well.
I agree, mate. And I think the veteran piece is a very special. It's a very special group that, at times, their special needs need to be recognised. And it's not that everyone's damaged. That's not the case at all. It's that a lot of veterans have got a particular experience, and that either needs to be nurtured and and put out there for others to see that not everyone is broken. These guys come with certain skill sets that are just so applicable to the civilian workforce and things like that. So it's important for us to recognise them and what they do, and pay homage to those who are still serving.
I think that given the well, the end to it now, but, you know, the fact that there's been a war for so long and multiple ones in between, that most people's opinion of veterans, when we talk about mental health and getting veterans help and bringing them together, most people's opinion is that they're damaged from deployments.
Sure.
My view is that, you know, you've got the kid that joined the army at 17 that did 4 years and got out. He doesn't know anything other than military, or he did 6 years or 8 years. He's 25 years old. He's done 8 years, but he doesn't know how to live like a civilian.
Totally.
He may have never deployed, but that doesn't mean that he's not, you know, someone that needs to be linked up with other people to have a routine in his life. The military, like jail, for one of a better example, it's just routine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
These guys are institutionalized. I was institutionalized to a degree, but I joined the military later. So I think people's perception is that it's all from deploying, and it's not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've got around about 50 employees now in my business, and I'm seeing similar patterns emerging through my current staff as I see from veterans. You know, the PTSD experience from deployment is obviously something that is, is there and does exist. And there are some broken soldiers and things like that, absolutely. But in the civilian workspace, I've seen it as well. And I feel like it is relative in some aspects. But yeah, look, it's the veteran side of things, it's very simple. It's not just because they've deployed. In fact, when you look at it, I think it was 31,000 people have deployed to Afghanistan over the last 21 years, whatever it is. There is a huge number of soldiers that have come through in the last 5-6 years that haven't deployed at all. And they're still having to, once they're getting out, they're still experiencing very similar mindset issues that some of the guys who have gone to war are.
So, as a former officer, how do you would have taken a lot of time and care and protected and looked after a lot of your soldiers, being there when they needed it to a degree, obviously as much as possible, but there's still that officer separation thing where they'll lean on their mates before they go up the chain.
Sure.
But you're always looking over them, right? There's always that umbrella of protection. How do you deal with that post-military, knowing that there's a lot of soldiers that relied on you at some point in time? Do you find yourself sometimes just pulled back in?
Yeah. Look, I like to think that I've always got a connection to my soldiers. I mean, the experience in Afghanistan, whether you're an officer or a soldier, I was a lieutenant. So, you know, I was in the shit with the boys. And I like to think that that's created a connection there. And I do genuinely have, I'm in contact with the majority of my guys that I was in charge of. And we all lean on each other. You know, they check in on me. It's not just one way anymore. We're all grown-ups now, as opposed to being 18, 19-year-old kids when we were over there. And so everyone checks on each other. Definitely, I've had a number of people reach out to me, and around this time of year, they reach out especially. And yeah, I like to think that I'm there for them, but they're certainly there for me as well.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I think it's one of the things you miss, but it also never goes away. Is I picked up the phone and sent a message to 2 guys recently who I haven't seen for probably 11 years or something like that. And you send a message and they're like, "Hey, bro, what's happening? Like, it's awesome to talk to you." And it's like yesterday.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that never goes away. We deployed together, joined the army together, did IETs together, deployed together. Yeah, everything. Except then when I went on to greener pastures and become a PDI. So it's yeah, but that connection never goes. And I got a funny story. I know I brought you here to talk about you, but no. There's an officer. I can't say his name because he's been in some trouble recently. But there's an officer, and I was at a fight show in Canberra, and I was cornering 2 guys, and someone's the opposition's mum was very drunk, and she said a few things that were not very good. Anyway, I said something to her keep her mouth shut. And her son didn't like it, so he's attacked me from behind inside the cage. So the officer who deployed as my chain of command, man, he was like climbed fucking 4 sets of seats and was up in the cage ready to fight. And I'm like, that's the connection, right? It's like he's an officer. He you know, you do the right thing and you say the right things and you lead the troops, but he was fucking on my shoulder ready to punch on in the middle of an MMA cage, mind you. Crazy as. But that's the things that you miss when you leave, but they stay with you to a point.
I agree. I haven't seen the camaraderie in the civilian world that I saw in the military. And I like to think that there's no one that I served with that if I called right now wouldn't offer me a place to crash on their couch. I feel like that camaraderie is always there. And I genuinely just haven't seen that in the civilian world.
Yep. So obviously there's a lot going on at the moment in the world. Are you happy to talk about that?
Oh, are we talking about COVID or are we talking about Kabul?
Well, I was thinking about talking about both.
Yeah.
But
happy to chat about it.
Well, while we're on the military, we'll discuss. We're going a bit back and forth here, but we'll discuss Kabul. Obviously, it's been 2 weeks or something since they pulled out. It was not really. It was not really planned very well, obviously. And most people would have seen and especially for civilians, it's pretty fucking daunting. There was people falling from aeroplanes yesterday, and there's that video circulating. So it's like when people are climbing on aeroplanes to fucking survive, and it's doing like 400 k's an hour, and it's in the air, and they're dropping off like flies.
Doesn't it tell you everything, mate, about their situation? You know, they know. They're not stupid people. They know what's going to happen if they hang on to the side of an aeroplane, and they choose that over what their potential fate would have been.
Yeah.
It almost sums it up completely, mate. They're terrified, and I feel awful for them.
Yeah, it's hard not to feel for them, right?
100%.
Where did we go wrong? What the fuck happened?
Look,
my personal view is that we did good. For 20 years, we provided a significant amount of peace that those people otherwise wouldn't have had. Some light. We changed kids, women's lives. We changed, we did our job for while we were there. And it's way above my pay grade that something fucked up. So I'm happy with what I did. But it's like, where did we go so wrong that within 2 weeks an entire country is being slaughtered?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for the whole entire strategy of where we went wrong. But in my personal opinion, I think withdrawing as suddenly as we did was only going to lead into one direction. And that was that an army that didn't really have the will to fight the Taliban to begin with, why would they, without the support of the coalition, put themselves at risk when the alternative was potentially for someone that they, do we want an Americanized government in there, or do we want a Taliban government in there? To them, it must be 50-50. For us, looking at it and looking at their culture, how can you expect a culture like theirs to just take on a Western government? To me, that doesn't make too much sense. So, in my opinion, or for the way I looked at it, it was always going to happen when we pulled out that this sort of takeover. I'm not surprised that it was this quick.
I had a conversation with someone this morning, and we were discussing, we were sort of roughly breaking up what was happening. And so we went there in 2001. I'm sure the Special Forces were there the whole time, but
no doubt.
In 2006 was the first deployment that went back again. And so for a period of 15 years, so 20 years was the whole war, but for a period of 15 years, we had troops on the ground, 100% from the majority of the military, not just Special Forces.
Sure.
Over that 15 years, we roughly broke it up. So you got Reconstruction Task Force, then you got Mentoring Reconstruction Task Force, and then you got the Mentoring Task Force. If you break that up, it's probably there was 2 or 3 years of Reconstruction. So we haven't really mentored an army at all. We just built patrol bases and stuff, and roads and you know, a lot of other stuff, but we built a heap of shit for a few of that years. Then we did some mentoring and reconstruction. We really only mentored a country for like 5 or 6 years. So you got an entire generation of people, and we've tried to make them strong enough and give them the ability to fight for themselves over a period of 5 to 7 years. As a, you know, like with the whole focus on that, it's not enough time to get to change a culture and make them stand up against an army of Taliban that's been fucking fighting for how long?
This is a country that's been at war for ever, 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, in the modern time and you know, going back, I mean, you could probably count on your two hands how many years they haven't been at war, probably. I agree. I think, you know, counterinsurgency is extremely complex. And, you know, you have to train generations of people to think in a certain way. We're there trying to change an ideology, right? An ideology that they've lived with forever. And we expect to do that in a few years. Come on. Really, it doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe my pay grade's not high enough to understand it, but for me, that doesn't make any sense. But I prefer to concentrate on what we did while we were there, as opposed to the political and strategic aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I had a lot of people messaging or whatnot, or I see a lot of angry people at the moment, and I just focus on what I did. You know, for my period of 6 to 7 months, we did what we could. I gave water bottles to kids to play soccer, and I changed people's lives for a period of 6 to 7 months, and I'm happy with that. And and again, like we look at it, you can't change that ideology, right, in a short period of time. Yeah, it's got to be multiple generations or decades where you're changing it over time. So, you know, like it was a bad withdrawal, pulling out of there as unorganised, I guess, or as abruptly as we did. But I guess the other option was to stay there forever, you know, a little bit like Timor or something like that.
Yeah, look, and as I said, it's a hard one, and looking at that level of strategy, I don't see the point because it's done now. Yeah. What I can talk about really is I've had a lot of veterans reach out to me over the last, few days especially, about was it worth it? You know, we're connected to some of the parents of the fallen who I can only imagine what's going through their mind right now about, you know, how difficult it is. But I look at it very simply that, you know, these people, we all took up the call when we were asked to, and we went over there willing. And while we were there, we did enable the people to live a more peaceful life. And I can speak for my own unit where I know for sure, and I won't get into details of particular incidents, but we certainly saved people's lives while we were there. And, you know, was it worthwhile? Well, you tell me how worthwhile it is to save one person's life, and then I'll give you an answer. For me, saving one person's life while we were over there was totally worthwhile. And, you know, for most soldiers, I think they need to look at, they took up the call when they were asked to, and they did it willingly, and they should be extremely proud of what they did while they were over there, because certainly they helped a lot of people who, you know, without them being there wouldn't have been helped.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. It's obviously a weird subject. It's a bit touchy. It's all fresh. It's still current. It's still going on.
And very emotional, you know. Like even now, keeping my emotions in check. You know, I'm angry.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. So, you know, trying to keep this, you know, more level-headed is difficult because, you know, like a lot of people, I want to yell and scream and carry on, but. You know, I just think it's really important to maintain that level of emotion where we can really look at what was important. And for us, it's that we helped people when there was no help available to them.
Well, and I think as individuals now, the people that are angry, scared, emotional, upset, sad, it's important to self-reflect and then break down the way you feel and
I also
understand those emotions.
Yeah, I also think this is an important time now for Australia to rally behind their veterans. Now, it's one thing for a veteran to say my service was worthless. It's another thing completely for media or civilians to say, well, what was the point? What you did over there was pointless and worthless and all that. Well, no. Now is the time to get behind the veterans and say to them, your service was appreciated. You did what you had to do, and you went when the government asked you to go. It wasn't your decision to go. And people need to get behind their veterans now and really say to them, we are proud of you. We do not need another Vietnam. The guys coming back and getting spat on. We don't need that. It doesn't help. And it's really counterintuitive to what we achieved over there. So, if I can say anything, it would be for people to rally around their veterans and really let them know that their service is appreciated.
Well, you gave me goosebumps. So we're gonna fucking leave that subject there. But let's go to the, well, that is current, but let's go to the current situation.
Sure.
The fucking Labor government, all right? I'm not really into politics, by the way, but let's go to COVID. It's fucking taken over the world, but more importantly, it's taken away our freedom and everything that we've worked for. And, my view on it is that we're dealing with a flu that's killing people, but it's not a fucking plague. It's a flu, in my opinion, and I'm no medical professional or scientist, but it's a lot of people die from different flus each year, and we don't really contain them like we are now. But my opinion is that we're killing livelihoods, and in turn, there's going to be a lot more issues after COVID, or once we decide that we need to learn to live with it. Yeah. There's going to be a lot more issues afterwards than there is during it.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get political about it, and as you say, I'm not a medical professional either. I can speak to my experience only, and that is that snap lockdowns and things like that are really, really damaging for the business. And I appreciate that we need to put the health of the population, as a priority. But, where do you draw the line on the health of the population? When people's livelihoods are being destroyed, their mental robustness disappears with it. And, are we putting people in danger from that, instead of COVID? Well, I don't really know. But what I do know is, our business has had to evolve significantly just to survive, and snap lockdowns cost a lot of money. Instability in the workplace is rife. I've said it a few times now in press conferences and things like that. I wish I could tell my employees that they have a job for the next month. Most of mine are casuals, university students, etc. Some of them living week to week. I can't sit here and tell them definitely next week you are going to have this many hours and therefore you will be paid this much the week after, because in 6 hours I can have a lockdown thrown on me. So that's where it is for me. It's really difficult to run a business, especially a hospitality business in shopping centres, when we have this sort of instability and this ability to enact emergency powers to lock us down. It's a tough pill to swallow.
So where, it's a silly question because I hear, I get asked it a lot, and I'm sure you do, and I heard you get asked it the other day. People say, how many more lockdowns can you survive? But, I know as a veteran, there is no, you don't give up. Oh, fuck, I have to shut all my cafes, but you'll open another one when it's all over, right? It's you're never, going to give up. Do you know what I mean? But it's how much damage do you take before it's over?
Well, this is right, and you have to weigh up. It comes down to maths at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This many lockdown days equals this much lost revenue, which equals this much damage over this period of time. Survival, I suppose, is subjective to certain individuals. And for us, as I said the other day, I'll never give up. But what does survival mean? To me, survival means not putting myself in a position that I can't recover from. But I'm happy to take a hit. And I'm happy to take a hit to try and keep my staff in work. They have bills to pay. They have to feed their families. So someone's got to take the hit. and I'm happy to at the moment. But eventually, it's just going to get to a point where it's just unsustainable.
Yeah, right. I mean, you take too many hits and it just builds up.
Right.
And like, there's only so much debt, or even if it's not debt, just loss that you can sustain before you realize that it's just going to keep going and you can't get out of it. But what's worse, and I'm pretty sure every business owner that I've spoken to is the same, is that it doesn't come down the chain. So like, landlords are not letting up. They don't, generally speaking, they're not letting up on people. They're kind of forcing you to force their hand. Well, that's my experience as well. So I feel like a lot of businesses, if there was support, better support, scalable support, which we've talked about recently, then there was more force from the government for the pressure to be relieved down the tree, like down the chain, then it would get better when you get to the bottom person, which is a small business owner who's renting a building for the most part off either a large organisation or someone who probably doesn't really need to give you any rent reprieve.
Yeah, look, it's hard for me to comment from a landlord's perspective because I understand that they're losing money as well. I think that there has to be scalable support, and I think that honestly, it's hard for me to fathom how there's not an actions on already for a snap lockdown. You know, snap lockdown this many days. This is a scalable support package for a business. Now, is that feasible? You know, where does that money come from? Oh, well, look, I don't know, but realistically, if they've got the power to lock your business down, they have to have something in place to support.
Bitcoin.
Is that the next topic, is it?
I don't know anything about it, so go for it.
No, look, it's I just think there has to be support for business.
Well, I mean, landlords is a business as well, so that's what I mean. So if the support comes from the top and it's scalable, then you would hope, especially if legislation's involved, which it is now, that landlords can then give tenants who are affected some, pressure release.
Look, I want to sit here and tell you that that the landlords have been terrible for me, and that's why our business is the way it is, blah, blah, blah. But no, in my particular experience, all of the landlords have been quite reasonable. Yes, they want their money, but I've had all of them have been willing to negotiate payment plans and deferral plans and things like that. You know, when I'm in Westfield, everyone thinks Westfield's evil. But I can't speak to that experience at all. They've been quite reasonable with me. You know, it would be easy for them to just shut the doors when you fall behind, but they've been reasonable with me.
So as a business owner who's definitely feeling the brunt of COVID, snap lockdowns, extended restrictions, a lot of people think that masks are the way. A lot of people actually agree with that and think that like, oh, we'll just lift the lockdown and wear masks. But that actually has an ongoing impact on business, because I know myself, like I'm not going out and wearing a mask. I'll just stay at home, order online. So that has a significant impact on business over time as well, right?
I do agree. And look, let me be clear on the subject. I would rather be wearing masks or have mandated masks than mandated lockdowns.
Yeah.
And if masks are the difference between a lockdown, then I am all for it.
Yep.
But we do see when people are wearing masks, especially initially, we saw significant drops in revenue. You know, I'm in the coffee business. You drink coffee, you put a mask on, all you can smell is yourself.
Yeah.
You know, your coffee breath. We initially saw that drop of revenue, but we're not seeing it as much anymore. I think now that people are so used to wearing masks, they're just kind of getting on with it. That's in my industry. You know, I can't speak for anyone else, but yeah, look, I don't know the medical advice on whether masks work or not. What I do know is initially it was doing a lot of damage, and it's hard at times to understand the consistency of the decision making.
Well, let's just move on to positives. So COVID ends tomorrow.
Okay.
Fucking yeah. COVID ends tomorrow. Where's 214 go? What's the end goal?
Well, all right. So COVID ends tomorrow. Firstly, I wouldn't work tomorrow because I'd be so drunk tonight celebrating.
Yeah.
But where do we go from here? So we have a plan to franchise out the remaining cafes and really focus on the wholesale, crafting specialty blends of coffee for various companies. That's the end state now, is to evolve more to the wholesale and distribution side of things. There are still plans in the works to expand physical locations, depending on the circumstances. But I still have that goal of 10 locations in Brisbane. But the wholesale and distribution is definitely the evolution of the business for sure.
And I can definitely speak from my experience that the coffee, 214 coffee, is phenomenal. Like, it's fucking, I've had so many bad coffees over my years. Nescafe 43 blend, international roast.
Come on.
The
It's
premiums.
apples and oranges.
But I won't mention the actual other wholesale brands, but there's some shit coffees out there.
We love our coffee, mate. We took a long time to develop our strong blended coffee, and I said no plenty of times while we were roasting it until I got it to the point where I really enjoyed it, and we stand by it now 100%. We love it, and the feedback we get is generally pretty positive.
I've tried to make coffee before, working in industries that I worked in prior to joining the military, and I cannot make a fucking coffee. But your general manager taught me how to make a coffee in an hour.
Good. So
your beans must be sensational. Either that or I've just grown up and I know how to make coffee now. But
they are very forgiving for an amateur making them on a machine. That's
yeah, and like from my experience, they are right up there with some of the best coffee I've ever tasted.
I appreciate that.
But you guys also do pods.
We do pods. Yeah.
Do.
We do
pods.
Pods, yep. Good English. Good
So
grammar.
biodegradable pods.
Yep.
They taste awesome.
Yeah.
They legit taste just like what I find is with some of the pods is you get that bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find that. They taste good.
The pods, they're new into our arsenal. We are working on the packaging and things. They are for sale, but we've kept the price to like the price of an espresso pod, and they fit in an espresso machine and things like that, and they're genuinely really good, fully biodegradable pods. That's a future, the amount of waste there is with that sort of thing is right up there. So, it's important to us, and it's like our coffee cups as well. These are 100% recyclable. So that's important for us.
Awesome, man. Well, I think we've covered a fair bit today, but where can people find 214? Obviously, you're on Instagram and Facebook.
Yep, Instagram, Facebook, website, cafe214.com.au. That's cafe TWO and then the number 14.com.au. So you'll find us on the website there. Physical locations, Chermside, Strathpine, Morayfield, Capalaba, and the Barracks Shopping Centre in the city, and Everton Park.
Yep. And it's at Cafe TWO 14 on your Facebook and Instagram as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. Okay, cool. So thanks for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it. If you're a military veteran, you need to talk to someone, reach out to 214. These guys will definitely lend an ear. They'll pass on information you need. And if you just want to drink good coffee, don't risk it. 214's where you need to be. So, again, former Army officer and current coffee entrepreneur, Michael Lorigan, thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you guys next time.